You can be intelligent, hardworking, and full of good ideas, yet still feel invisible in conversations. You speak in meetings, but nothing moves. You explain yourself, but people interrupt. You share ideas, but someone else repeats them later and gets the credit. If that sounds familiar, this isn't because you lack knowledge. It's because the way you speak doesn't yet carry weight. Most people believe leadership comes from titles, experience, or confidence you're born with. But real leadership often begins much earlier, in ordinary moments, through ordinary conversations. It begins when people feel something solid in your voice. Not loud, not aggressive, solid, calm, certain. When your words land instead of drifting away. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, and I worked with someone who was clearly the smartest person in the room. He prepared thoroughly, knew every detail, and always had the right answer. But when he spoke, his voice softened at the wrong moments. He added unnecessary explanations. He tried to sound polite instead of precise. Over time, people stopped listening, not because he was wrong, but because his words felt optional. Later, I watched another colleague say far less, yet influence every decision. He didn't rush. He didn't over-explain. When he spoke, people leaned in. When he finished, people acted. That contrast changed how I saw communication forever. Leadership was not about saying more. It was about saying less, with intention. This audiobook is about that shift. It's about learning how to talk like a leader by building confidence, clarity, and power in the way you speak. Not power over people, but power within yourself. The kind that comes from knowing what you mean, choosing your words carefully, and standing behind them without apology. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need a louder voice or a bigger personality. You need alignment between what you think, what you feel, and what you say. When those three line up, people feel it instantly. Trust grows, respect follows. In the next hour, we'll break this down step by step. You'll hear real examples from everyday life. Moments where small changes in language and tone created massive differences in outcomes. You'll learn how leaders speak under pressure, how they stay grounded when challenged, and how they use words to move people toward action instead of confusion. Most importantly, you'll learn how to apply these lessons in your own life, in conversations with co-workers, in difficult discussions with family, in moments when you usually doubt yourself or hold back. This is not theory. This is practice. Many people walk through life believing they must wait until they feel confident before they speak up. But confidence is not the starting point. It is the result. It grows each time you choose clarity over comfort, each time you pause instead of rushing, and each time you say what you mean without hiding behind excuses or filler words. This training is about building that trust with yourself. Slowly, your voice becomes steady. By the end of this audiobook, you won't just understand communication differently. You'll hear yourself differently. And once that happens, everything begins to change. If this message resonates with you, share this video with a friend you know who needs it right now. Someone who's ready to improve their life but hasn't yet found their voice. Chapter 1. Why most people are not taken seriously when they speak. There is a quiet frustration many people carry, even if they rarely admit it out loud. They speak, but nothing changes. They make suggestions, but decisions go another direction. They explain themselves clearly in their own mind, yet the room moves on as if they never spoke at all. Over time, this creates a dangerous conclusion. Maybe my voice doesn't matter. But here's the truth most people never hear. The problem is not your intelligence, it's not your ideas, and it's not a lack of preparation. The problem is that people don't experience your words as solid. They experience them as optional. I once watched this play out in a small but telling moment. A friend of mine worked in a fast-growing company, so he was respected for his work ethic and known as someone who knew his stuff. During a team meeting, a major decision was being discussed. He raised his hand slightly and said, "I think maybe we could consider adjusting the timeline a little, just in case." No one responded. The meeting continued. 10 minutes later, another person said, "We need to extend the timeline. Rushing this will hurt quality." The room nodded. The idea was accepted immediately. Same idea, different delivery. Only one carried weight. This is how credibility quietly erodes. Not through being wrong, but through how your words arrive. Most people don't lose influence overnight. They lose it sentence by sentence. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Human beings are constantly scanning for signals of certainty. Not arrogance, not dominance. Certainty. And when your voice sounds hesitant, your message feels unstable. When your language is full of escape hatches, maybe just kind of, I think, people unconsciously assume you're not fully committed. And if you're not committed, why should they be? This doesn't mean leaders are always confident inside. Many aren't. The difference is that leaders don't let uncertainty leak into every sentence. They separate internal doubt from external communication. They understand something most people never learn. Your voice sets the frame before your words are even processed. Think about the last time someone asked you a direct question and you began your answer with an apology. "Sorry, but..." Or, "This might be a dumb question, but..." In that moment, you didn't make your listener more comfortable. You made your idea smaller before it even had a chance to stand. Yes, I used to do this constantly. I believed it made me polite, approachable, easy to work with. What it actually did was train people to discount me. Not intentionally, subconsciously. Being taken seriously is not about demanding respect. It's about removing behaviors that quietly signal you don't expect it. Another pattern that undermines credibility is over-explaining. Many people talk too much, not because they love hearing themselves, but because they're trying to convince. They pile sentence on top of sentence, hoping clarity will emerge through volume. But the opposite happens. The more you explain, the more people feel unsure about what actually matters. A leader understands that clarity doesn't come from saying everything. It comes from saying the right thing, then stopping. I once worked with a manager who rarely spoke in meetings. When he did, it was usually 1 or 2 sentences. He didn't rush to fill silence. He didn't justify himself, and because he spoke so little, people listened closely when he finally did. His words didn't compete for attention. They commanded it quietly. Most people are afraid of silence. They see it as awkward or risky. Leaders see silence as space. Space allows your words to land. Space gives others time to process. Space communicates confidence without saying a word. Another reason people aren't taken seriously is emotional leakage. When you're nervous, excited, defensive, or eager to be liked, it often shows in your tone and pacing. You talk faster. Your voice rises at the end of statements. You react instead of responding. Even if your message is logical, your delivery signals instability. This doesn't mean leaders don't feel emotion. Some they do. The difference is that they don't let emotion drive the steering wheel of their communication. They pause, they breathe, they choose. There's also a subtle but powerful distinction between speaking to be heard and speaking to be followed. Most people speak to express themselves. Leaders speak to create movement. That shift alone changes how every sentence is shaped. When you speak to be heard, you focus on your own relief. Getting the thought out. Clearing your chest. When you speak to be followed, you focus on the listener's next step. What do they need to understand? What decision should this lead to? What action should come next? If people consistently walk away, unsure what to do after you speak, that's not a listening problem. It's a leadership problem. One small story illustrates this clearly. A friend of mine was leading a volunteer project. At the end of each meeting, he would say, "So yeah, we'll kind of try to move forward and see how things go this week." Everyone nodded. And then, nothing happened. Eventually, he changed one thing. At the end of meetings, he said, "By Friday, I need the draft finished and shared in the group chat. I'll review it Saturday morning." No extra words. No apology. Suddenly, people followed through. Not because they feared him, but because they understood him. Being taken seriously often comes down to this. Do your words reduce uncertainty, or do they add to it? Weak communication increases uncertainty. Strong communication narrows it. This chapter isn't about judging yourself. It's about awareness. Once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. You'll start noticing how often people undermine themselves without realizing it. And you'll realize how often you've done the same, not because you're incapable, but because no one ever taught you differently. Leadership communication is not about personality. It's not reserved for extroverts or natural speakers. It's a skill, a trained one. And like any skill, it begins with removing what doesn't serve you. In the next chapter, we'll focus on the foundation of all strong communication, learning how to own every word you say. Because the moment you fully stand behind your words, others begin to stand behind you too. Chapter 2. Own every word. You say, there is a subtle moment in every conversation when people decide whether to trust you or not. It doesn't happen at the end. It happens at the beginning. It happens when you open your mouth and choose your first few words. In that moment, people aren't judging your ideas yet. They're judging your relationship to those ideas. Do you stand behind what you're about to say? Or are you already preparing an escape? Owning your words means taking responsibility for them before anyone else does. It means speaking as if you're willing to be associated with what you say, even if it's challenged, questioned, or unpopular. This is one of the clearest differences between people who lead and people who wait to be led. I once had a manager who was technically in charge, but never truly in control. And every decision he communicated came wrapped in uncertainty. This is what we're thinking, but we're open to ideas. This might change later. Let's try this and see. On the surface, it sounded collaborative. In reality, it created confusion. No one knew what was real, what was temporary, or what actually mattered. Eventually, the team stopped listening carefully. Why invest energy in something that might be reversed tomorrow? Contrast that with another leader I worked with years later. When she spoke, she didn't pretend to have all the answers, but she was clear about what she did know. This is the direction we're taking right now. Here's the decision we're moving forward with. If something changes, I'll tell you. Her words had edges, not sharp edges, clear ones. People trusted her not because she was perfect, but because she was anchored. Owning your words does not mean being rigid. It means being deliberate. Most people misunderstand this. They think owning their words means sounding aggressive, dominant, or overly confident. In reality, it's the opposite. It's about alignment. When your tone, your language, and your intention point in the same direction, people feel stability. And humans follow stability. Think about how often people distance themselves from their own statements. I don't know, but this might not be right. I could be wrong, but these phrases feel harmless, polite, safe. But they quietly tell your listener, you don't need to take this seriously. There's a difference between humility and self-erasure. Leaders are humble about what they don't know. They are firm about what they do know. So I learned this lesson during a difficult conversation with a close friend. We had been circling around an issue for months, both avoiding clarity to keep the peace. Every time I tried to express my concern, I softened it to the point of meaninglessness. I thought I was being kind. What I was really doing was being unclear. Eventually, The tension boiled over. When we finally spoke honestly, the conversation was uncomfortable, but relieving. My friend told me something I'll never forget. "I wish you had said this earlier. I could tell something was off, but I didn't know what." My lack of ownership hadn't protected the relationship. It had delayed its repair. When you don't own your words, people feel it. They sense hesitation, even if they can't name it. And when people sense hesitation, they hesitate to trust. Now, owning your words starts internally. Before you speak, ask yourself one simple question. Am I willing to stand by this sentence? If the answer is no, don't say it yet. Clarify your thought first. Leadership communication is not spontaneous. It is intentional. This is why strong communicators often pause before speaking. That pause is not emptiness. It's preparation. It's the moment where you decide what you actually mean, instead of discovering it out loud. Another important part of ownership is removing unnecessary apologies. Many people apologize for speaking, for taking time, for existing in the conversation. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry if this is obvious. Sorry, just one more thing. Over time, this trains others to see your contributions as interruptions rather than value. Apologies have their place, and ownership means using them with purpose, not as punctuation. Language also reveals ownership through structure. Leaders tend to speak in statements, not questions disguised as statements. Compare these two sentences. We should probably move the deadline, right? We need to move the deadline. The first asks for permission. The second sets direction. One invites doubt. The other invites response. This doesn't mean you can't ask questions. Leaders ask questions constantly, but they don't hide decisions inside uncertainty. They separate exploration from direction. There's a quiet confidence in clarity, and clarity creates relief. I once watched a junior employee transform how others treated him by changing one habit. He stopped narrating his uncertainty. Instead of saying, "I'm not sure if this makes sense, but here's an idea," he said, "Here's an idea I think is worth considering." Same thought, different ownership. Within weeks, people began turning to him for input. Nothing about his intelligence changed. His posture toward his own ideas did. Owning your words also means accepting their consequences. Leaders don't retreat when their words are questioned. They don't panic when someone disagrees. They stay present. They listen. They respond thoughtfully. That steadiness communicates far more power than winning an argument ever could. People don't follow those who defend themselves constantly. They follow those who are grounded enough not to. This chapter isn't about becoming fearless. It's about becoming congruent. When you own your words, you stop leaking energy through doubt and over-explanation. You conserve it, and that energy becomes presence. Presence is what people feel before they decide to trust you. As you move forward, start noticing your own language. Not to judge it, but to refine it. Pay attention to where you soften unnecessarily, where you apologize without reason, where you distance yourself from your own thoughts. Each small adjustment is a step toward leadership. In the next chapter, we'll build on this foundation by focusing on clarity. Because owning your words is powerful, but clarity is what makes them usable. When people clearly understand you, they don't just listen, they follow. Chapter 3. Clarity beats intelligence. There is a common belief that the smartest person in the room will naturally become the leader. In reality, the opposite is often true. Intelligence alone does not move people. Clarity does, and in many situations, the person who speaks most clearly ends up guiding decisions, even if others know more. Clarity is not about simplifying your thinking. It's about simplifying your expression. And those two are very different skills. I once attended a strategy meeting where two people presented competing ideas. The first speaker had deep expertise. He explained background, context, history, edge cases, and future possibilities. His presentation was technically impressive. By the end, however, the room felt tired. People were confused about what actually mattered. The second speaker stood up and said, "Here's the problem. Here's the solution. Here's what happens if we don't act. And here's what I recommend we do next." It took less than 3 minutes. That idea was chosen. Later, someone said quietly, "I'm not sure it's better. I'm just sure I understand it." That sentence captures the entire chapter. Most people assume clarity comes after intelligence. Leaders understand that clarity comes before influence. If people don't clearly understand what you're saying, they can't support it, act on it, or defend it. Confusion kills momentum faster than disagreement ever will. One reason intelligent people struggle with clarity is because they see too much. When you understand all the nuances, exceptions, and possibilities, it's tempting to share them. But leadership communication is not about demonstrating the full map in your head. So it's about choosing the one path others need to walk right now. Clarity requires restraint. I had to learn this lesson when mentoring a younger colleague. She was brilliant, fast-learning, and deeply thoughtful. But every time she explained an idea, it came out tangled. She tried to account for every scenario in one breath. People often responded with, "So, what are you actually suggesting?" At first, she thought the issue was confidence. It wasn't. It was focus. We worked on one simple habit. Before speaking, she would write down the answer to a single question. If people remember only one sentence, what should it be? That sentence became her anchor. Everything else was optional. Within weeks, her communication changed dramatically. Meetings moved faster. Her ideas were referenced later. People began saying, "Can you clarify this for us?" Not because she was unclear, but because they trusted her to make things understandable. Clarity is an act of leadership because it reduces cognitive load. When you speak clearly, you make it easier for others to think, and people instinctively gravitate toward those who make thinking feel lighter, not heavier. Another hidden enemy of clarity is the desire to sound smart. Many people unconsciously use complex language, long sentences, and abstract terms because they believe it earns respect. In practice, it creates distance. When people struggle to follow you, they don't admire you. They disengage. Leaders don't speak to impress. They speak to align. A simple test of clarity is this. After you speak, can someone accurately explain your point to someone else? If not, your message wasn't clear enough yet. Because leadership communication travels. If it can't be repeated, it can't scale. Clarity also depends on structure. Strong communicators organize their thoughts before sharing them. They don't wander toward a conclusion. They lead to it. They use signposts. Here's the issue. Here's why it matters. Here's what we're doing. This gives listeners a mental framework to place information into. Without structure, even good ideas feel scattered. I once worked with a team lead who struggled to gain alignment despite being well respected. In meetings, discussions would spiral. People talked past each other. Decisions were delayed. Eventually, he changed one thing. At the start of every meeting, he clearly stated the purpose. By the end of this meeting, we need to decide X. Instantly, conversations became sharper. Side topics were parked. Time was respected. Clarity begins with intention. It's also important to understand that clarity does not mean oversimplifying reality. It means choosing what matters now. Leaders can always add nuance later, once direction is established. But without initial clarity, nuance becomes noise. Another powerful aspect of clarity is pacing. People often speak quickly when they have a lot to say, assuming speed helps efficiency. In reality, speed often reduces comprehension. Slowing down, pausing between key points, and allowing silence gives your message space to settle. Silence is not empty. It's where understanding forms. Think about the communicators you trust most. They rarely rush. They allow their words to land. That rhythm signals confidence and control. Clarity also means being specific. Vague language creates vague outcomes. Words like soon, better, improve, or handle it feel productive but lead nowhere. Leaders replace them with specifics. By Friday. Increase by 10%. Call the client today. Specific language creates momentum because it removes interpretation. There's a small but powerful story that illustrates this. A friend of mine managed a remote team that constantly missed deadlines. He believed the issue was motivation. In reality, it was language. Tasks were described vaguely. Expectations were implied, not stated. Once he started being precise, deadlines, deliverables, ownership, performance improved almost immediately. Nothing else changed. Clarity didn't just improve results, it reduced stress. People want to do well. Most confusion is not resistance, it's uncertainty. Leaders remove uncertainty with clarity. This chapter is not asking you to become less intelligent or less thoughtful. It's asking you to translate your thinking into something others can use. That translation is a leadership skill, not a personality trait. As you continue listening, begin practicing this in small ways. Before you speak, ask yourself, what is the point? Why does it matter? What should happen next? If you can answer those 3 questions simply, your communication will carry far more influence than complexity ever could. In the next chapter, we'll focus on the instrument that delivers clarity, your voice itself. Because even the clearest message loses power if it's delivered without control. Chapter 4. Control your voice. Before you lead others. Before people decide whether to trust your words, they react to your voice. Not the accent. Not the pitch alone. The state behind it. Your voice reveals what's happening inside you long before your message is processed. Calm or rushed. Grounded or reactive. Certain or unsure. Leadership begins there. Most people think of voice as something fixed. This is just how I sound. But your voice is not a personality trait. It's a behavior. And like any behavior, it can be trained. I once sat in a meeting where a project update was going poorly. The presenter had good data and a reasonable plan, but the moment questions started, his voice changed. He spoke faster. His sentences overlapped. His tone climbed upward at the end of statements as if asking for approval. The room grew restless. The people interrupted. The discussion drifted. Nothing about the plan had changed, but the signal had. His voice told everyone he was under pressure, and pressure invites challenge. Later that day, I watched another leader handle a far more difficult situation. She was challenged directly in front of others about a decision she had made. She didn't rush to defend herself. She didn't raise her volume. She paused, breathed, and answered in a measured tone. The room settled instantly. Even those who disagreed listened. The difference was not authority. It was control. Control of your voice is not about sounding dominant. It's about sounding centered. When your voice is steady, people assume your thinking is steady too. When it's rushed or strained, they assume the opposite. Check, one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to control others before controlling themselves. They push harder when they feel ignored. They speak louder when they feel uncertain. They talk more when they feel challenged. All of these reactions weaken leadership presence. Leaders do the opposite. When tension rises, they slow down. There's a simple reason for this. Your nervous system drives your voice. When you're anxious, your breathing becomes shallow. Shallow breathing leads to higher pitch, faster speech, and less resonance. People feel this immediately. Even if they don't consciously notice it, they react to it. This is why calm leaders feel powerful even when they say very little. I learned this lesson during a difficult phone call early in my career. I was unprepared and felt cornered. As the conversation went on, and I spoke faster, hoping speed would make me sound competent. Instead, I sounded nervous. The other person took control without raising their voice once. When the call ended, I realized something uncomfortable. I had given up authority not through my words, but through my tone. From that moment on, I started paying attention to how leaders use their voices in pressure moments. One pattern became clear. They breathe before they speak. Not dramatically, not obviously, but deliberately. Breathing is the foundation of vocal control. When you slow your breath, your voice follows. When your voice steadies, your mind does too. This is not theory, it's physiology. A simple practice can change everything. Before responding to a question or challenge, take one full breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Then speak. Now that single pause does three things at once. It gives you time to think, it signals confidence, and it calms the room. Another element of vocal control is pace. Most people equate speed with competence. Leaders understand that pace creates authority. Speaking slightly slower than average gives your words weight. It gives listeners time to process. It communicates that you are not in a hurry to prove yourself. This doesn't mean speaking slowly all the time. It means choosing your pace intentionally. Important points deserve space. Letting silence exist after a key sentence allows it to land. Silence, used well, becomes emphasis. There's a small but powerful story that illustrates this. A colleague of mine used to fill every gap in conversation. If no one responded immediately, he jumped in again, rephrasing, adding examples, clarifying, endlessly. One day, he decided to try something different. After making his point, he stopped talking. The silence felt uncomfortable at first, but then something interesting happened. Others began to respond more thoughtfully. His ideas were discussed instead of drowned out. Nothing changed except his willingness to let his words stand on their own. Volume is another misunderstood aspect of leadership voice. Many people assume being heard means being louder. In reality, speaking slightly quieter often draws people in. It forces listeners to pay attention. A controlled, moderate volume suggests confidence. Shouting suggests loss of control. Think of the calmest authority figures you've known. They rarely raise their voices. They didn't need to. Tone matters just as much. A flat tone can sound disengaged. An overly animated tone can sound unstable. Leadership tone sits in the middle, composed, present, intentional. It matches the message without overpowering it. There's also the issue of emotional leakage. When people feel attacked, they often let defensiveness creep into their voice. Sharpness, sarcasm, tension. Even if the words are polite, the tone tells another story. Leaders notice this and correct it in real time. They lower their tone, soften their pace, and recenter themselves. This doesn't make them weak. It makes them unshakable. One of the most effective leaders I know uses a simple internal cue when conversations get heated. He asks himself, am I responding or am I reacting? If it's reaction, he pauses. That pause is where leadership lives. Control of voice also includes knowing when not to speak. Silence can de-escalate tension faster than explanation. Choosing not to fill space can prevent unnecessary conflict. Leaders are comfortable letting others talk themselves into clarity. This chapter is not about performance. It's about presence. When you control your voice, you control the emotional temperature of the room. People take cues from you, often without realizing it. As you move forward, start paying attention to your voice in low-stakes moments. Phone calls, casual meetings, Conversations with friends. Notice your breathing, your pace, your tone. Small adjustments here create massive differences later when pressure is high. In the next chapter, we'll take this control and apply it toward action, learning how leaders use clear and grounded communication to move people forward instead of leaving them stuck in discussion. Chapter 5. Speak to move people to action. Many conversations sound productive but lead nowhere. People talk, agree, nod, and leave the room feeling busy, yet nothing actually happens. This is one of the clearest signs of weak leadership communication. If words don't create movement, they become noise. Leaders speak with a destination in mind. They don't talk to explore endlessly. They talk to move something forward, and that shift changes everything about how their words are shaped. I once worked on a team that had meetings almost every day. We discussed goals, challenges, and ideas at length. Everyone participated. Everyone cared. And still, progress was painfully slow. After one meeting, a colleague said quietly, "We keep talking, but nothing ever changes." That sentence exposed the real problem. We weren't lacking effort. We were lacking direction. Action doesn't come from enthusiasm alone. It comes from clarity paired with commitment. Most people assume that if they explain an idea well enough, action will naturally follow. Leaders know better. Understanding does not equal movement. People can fully understand something and still do nothing. Action requires instruction, not just insight. One small story illustrates this perfectly. A friend of mine led a community group and constantly felt frustrated by low follow-through. He would end meetings by saying things like, "Let's try to improve communication this week," or "We should work on being more organized." Everyone agreed. And then nothing changed. Eventually, someone asked him a simple question: "What exactly should we do next?" He realized he had never answered it clearly. The next meeting, he tried something different. He ended by saying, "By Wednesday, please update the shared document with your availability. On Friday, I'll assign roles and send a final schedule." Participation increased immediately. Same group, same people, different outcome. Leaders don't leave action to interpretation. Speaking to move people to action means translating ideas into steps. Not later, not eventually, now. This requires discipline because it forces you to choose. You can't ask people to do everything. You have to decide what matters most. This is where many communicators struggle. They want to be inclusive. They want to keep options open. They want to avoid sounding demanding. So they stay vague. But vagueness doesn't feel kind to the listener. It feels confusing. And confusion kills momentum. Clear direction creates relief. Another important distinction is between discussion and decision. Many people blur the two. They discuss ideas as if a decision has been made, or they announce decisions as if they're still open. Leaders separate these phases clearly. When it's time to discuss, they invite input. When it's time to decide, they signal closure. Language makes this distinction visible. "What are your thoughts on this?" invites exploration. "Here's what we're going to do next." Signals action. Mixing the two creates hesitation. I once observed a team lead who constantly revisited decisions. Not because new information appeared, but because his language never marked the decision as final. Team members waited instead of acting, unsure whether plans would change. Once he learned to clearly state, "This is the decision we're moving forward with," execution improved overnight. People want to move. They just need to know where. Another key element of action-oriented communication is ownership. When no one is clearly responsible, nothing happens. Leaders assign ownership explicitly, not harshly, not dramatically, simply clearly. "John will handle this. I'll follow up on that. You'll take the lead here." This isn't about control, it's about accountability, and accountability creates trust. There's also a timing component. Words like soon, later, or ASAP feel urgent but mean nothing. Leaders replace them with real timelines. A clear deadline creates structure. It allows people to plan, prioritize, and commit. I once worked with a manager who never used exact dates, and everything was coming up or in progress. The team lived in constant uncertainty. When he began attaching timelines to tasks, stress levels dropped. Productivity rose. Clarity didn't just create action, it created calm. Another overlooked aspect of action-oriented speech is simplicity. When instructions are complex, people hesitate. They fear doing the wrong thing. Leaders simplify actions until they feel doable. One step, one direction, one outcome. This doesn't mean oversimplifying the work. It means simplifying the next move. Complexity can be layered later. Action begins with something concrete. There's also power in repetition. Leaders repeat the action point at the end of conversations. Not word for word, but clearly enough that no one leaves uncertain. This reinforces direction without sounding forceful. For example, instead of ending with, "Any other questions?" a leader might end with, "So we're aligned. The draft is due Thursday, and we'll review it Friday morning." That sentence alone increases follow-through. Speaking to move people to action also requires emotional awareness. If people feel overwhelmed or unclear, they won't act. Leaders notice this and adjust. They ask, "What's blocking us?" or "What would make this easier?" Removing friction is part of leadership communication. Importantly, leaders don't confuse motivation with movement. Inspiring speeches feel good. Clear instructions get results. The best leaders know how to do both, but they never substitute inspiration for direction. This chapter is not about becoming demanding or rigid. It's about becoming effective. When you speak with action in mind, your words gain purpose. People stop wondering what you meant and start focusing on what to do. As you practice this, begin ending your conversations differently. Ask yourself, if someone left right now, would they know exactly what's expected of them? If the answer is no, clarify before you stop talking. In the next chapter, we'll address a common fear that holds many people back from clear direction. The fear of sounding harsh or aggressive, and show how to remove weak language while staying calm, respectful, and firm. Chapter 6. Drop weak language without becoming aggressive. One of the biggest fears people have when they try to communicate more clearly is this: if I stop softening my words, I'll sound rude. So they keep padding their sentences. They keep adding disclaimers. They keep shrinking their language, just enough to feel safe. And in doing so, they slowly erase their authority. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Weak language doesn't make you kind. It makes you unclear. And unclear communication often creates more tension than directness ever could. I once worked with someone who avoided conflict at all costs. Every request sounded like a suggestion. Every boundary sounded negotiable. He believed this made him easy to work with. Over time, people began ignoring deadlines, pushing back on commitments, and testing limits. Eventually, you see frustration built on both sides. He felt disrespected. Others felt confused. Nothing changed until he changed how he spoke. Weak language usually doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds polite. Words like just, maybe, kind of, I was wondering if, or it might be good to quietly drain strength from your message. Individually, they seem harmless. Together, they tell people your words are optional. Leaders don't remove these words to dominate others. They remove them to respect clarity. There's an important distinction to understand here. Firm language is not aggressive language. Aggression carries emotion, anger, pressure, urgency meant to overpower. Firm language carries intention. It's calm, it's grounded. and it's direct. I learned this distinction during a conversation with a mentor, and I told him I was struggling to give feedback because I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. He listened, then said something that stuck with me. "You're not being kind by being vague. You're being unclear, and unclear feedback wastes people's time." That reframed everything. Being direct doesn't mean being harsh. It means removing unnecessary softness while keeping respect. For example, compare these two statements. "I was just wondering if maybe you could try to send the report a little earlier next time." "Please send the report by 10 a.m. next time." The second sentence is not rude. It's respectful of time. It sets a clear expectation. It removes guessing. That clarity actually reduces stress for the listener. Many people fear that firm language will damage relationships. In reality, inconsistent language does far more damage. And when people don't know where they stand, trust erodes. Another story illustrates this well. A friend of mine managed a small creative team. He struggled to correct mistakes because he didn't want to discourage anyone. His feedback sounded like suggestions rather than standards. Over time, quality slipped. Deadlines were missed. Resentment grew. Eventually, he sat down with the team and changed his approach. He said calmly, "Quality matters here. From now on, work needs to meet these 3 criteria before submission." No anger, no blame, just clarity. The team responded positively. Standards rose. Morale improved. People don't need you to be soft. They need you to be clear. Weak language also shows up when people avoid taking a position. Phrases like, "I'm fine either way," or "whatever you think," might sound flexible. But overuse communicates disengagement. Leaders don't abdicate their perspective to avoid discomfort. They share it responsibly. This doesn't mean forcing your opinion. It means contributing it honestly. Another subtle form of weak language is excessive explanation. When you feel the need to justify every decision, it signals insecurity. Leaders explain when explanation adds value, not when it serves as a shield. I once noticed a shift in how a colleague was perceived after he stopped defending his decisions preemptively. Instead of saying, "We're doing this because of these 5 reasons," he said, "This is the decision. If you have concerns, let's discuss them." That change alone increased respect. People felt invited into dialogue rather than overwhelmed by justification. Dropping weak language also means removing emotional qualifiers that blur meaning. Words like "I feel like" or "I guess" shift responsibility away from the statement. Leaders take ownership by speaking plainly. "I believe," "I recommend," "I expect." Tone matters here. Firm language delivered with calm tone feels safe. The same words delivered with tension feel aggressive. This is why internal state matters. If you're irritated or defensive, pause before speaking. Ground yourself first, then speak. There's a powerful practice that helps with this. Before speaking, ask yourself, what is the cleanest version of this sentence? Not the nicest, not the longest, the cleanest. Often, that version is shorter than you expect. Silence also plays a role. When you remove weak language, you don't need to fill space. Let your words stand. Silence reinforces firmness without adding pressure. One of the most respected leaders I know rarely raises his voice or uses forceful language. He simply speaks clearly, then stops. That stopping is what gives his words weight. This chapter is not about becoming blunt or insensitive. It's about aligning your words with your intent. When you mean something, say it cleanly. When you don't, stay quiet until you do. That discipline builds trust. As you practice this, start small. Remove one unnecessary softener from your speech today. Notice how people respond. Most won't react negatively. Many will feel relieved. In the next chapter, we'll focus on what happens when your words are challenged, how to stay grounded, calm, and in control when others push back, question you, or disagree publicly. Chapter 7. Stay grounded when you're challenged. At some point, every conversation tests you. Someone disagrees, someone questions your decision, someone challenges you in front of others. In those moments, leadership is not about having the perfect answer. It's about how you hold yourself while the pressure is on. Most people lose authority not because they're wrong, but because they react. I once watched a team lead get publicly challenged during a meeting. The question itself wasn't aggressive, but it was pointed. Instead of pausing, he jumped in immediately. His voice tightened. He spoke faster. He defended every detail. The room shifted. What could have been a healthy discussion became uncomfortable. People stopped listening and started choosing sides. Later that same week, I saw another leader face a much tougher challenge. And she was questioned sharply about a decision that affected the entire team. She didn't rush. She let the question sit for a moment. Then she said calmly, "That's a fair concern. Let me explain how I'm thinking about it." The tone of the room changed instantly. The challenge lost its edge. The difference was not confidence, it was grounding. Being challenged triggers the nervous system. Your body interprets it as a threat. Heart rate rises, breathing shortens. The instinct is to protect yourself by explaining, justifying, or pushing back. Leaders notice this reaction and choose differently. Grounded leadership begins with the pause. That pause is not weakness, it's strength. It signals that you're not shaken. It gives you space to think. And it subtly communicates to everyone watching that you are in control of yourself, even when the situation isn't comfortable. There's a story that illustrates this well. A friend of mine was presenting a proposal he had worked on for weeks. Midway through, a senior colleague interrupted and said, "I don't see how this will work." The room went quiet. Instead of reacting, my friend took a breath and said, "Tell me more about what concerns you." That response did two things. It slowed the conversation and shifted the dynamic from confrontation to collaboration. By inviting clarity instead of defending immediately, he kept his footing. Another key to staying grounded is separating yourself from your idea. When people challenge your idea, it can feel personal, but leaders understand that ideas are tools, not identities. Detaching emotionally allows you to evaluate feedback without losing composure. But this doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It means listening without collapsing or hardening. Leaders also know when not to answer right away. Sometimes the strongest response is, "Let me think about that and come back to you." Many people avoid this because they fear it sounds weak. In reality, it sounds thoughtful. It shows you care more about accuracy than ego. I once worked with a director who used this phrase often. Far from losing respect, he gained it. People trusted that his answers were considered, not reactive. Another powerful grounding technique is slowing your body. Place your feet firmly on the ground. Lower your shoulders. Relax your jaw. These physical cues calm your nervous system and, in turn, your voice. Leadership presence is embodied, not just verbal. When challenges become emotional, tone matters more than content. That raising your voice, even slightly, signals escalation. Leaders keep their tone neutral. Calm tone de-escalates conflict faster than logic ever could. There's also the skill of setting boundaries during challenges. Not every challenge deserves a full debate. Some require redirection. Leaders use phrases like, "I hear your concern. For now, we're moving forward with this plan." Or, "That's outside the scope of this discussion." These statements are firm without being dismissive. One story comes to mind. A manager I respected was once interrupted repeatedly during a presentation. Instead of reacting, she paused and said, "I want to finish this point, then I'll come back to your question." She didn't apologize. She didn't raise her voice. The interruptions stopped. Staying grounded also means accepting that not everyone will agree with you. Nan leadership is not consensus, it's direction. Seeking universal approval weakens authority. Leaders are comfortable with respectful disagreement. This doesn't mean ignoring feedback, it means weighing it without losing your center. There's a quiet confidence in saying, "I understand your position, and I'm still choosing this direction." That sentence requires courage and calm. It signals that you've considered alternatives and made a decision. Grounded leaders also avoid winning arguments at the expense of trust. They don't need to prove they're right in the moment. They focus on maintaining the relationship and the direction. Often, time proves the decision without conflict. As you practice this, notice your internal signals when challenged. Do you feel the urge to speak immediately, to justify, to push back? That awareness is the first step. The second is choosing the pause. In everyday life, this might look like taking a breath before responding to criticism from a coworker, or listening fully before replying to a difficult comment from a family member. These moments train you for higher pressure situations. This chapter is about emotional regulation as much as communication. When you regulate yourself, you regulate the room. People mirror your state. Calm invites calm. Grounded presence invites respect. In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together by focusing on consistency. How to train your leadership voice daily so that confidence, clarity, and composure become natural, not forced. Chapter 8. Train your leadership voice. Every day, leadership communication is not built in moments of pressure. It's built in repetition. What you do daily determines how you sound when it matters most. This is why some people remain calm under scrutiny, while others collapse. It's not talent, it's training. Most people treat communication as something that just happens. They react, they improvise, they hope for the best. Leaders do something different. They practice quietly and consistently, long before they're tested. I once knew a manager who seemed unusually composed in difficult conversations. When asked how he stayed so calm, he said something unexpected: "I rehearse ordinary moments." He didn't mean scripts. He meant habits. The way he answered emails, the way he spoke in low-stakes meetings, the way he corrected small misunderstandings early. Those moments trained his voice to be steady by default. Your leadership voice is not what comes out when everything is easy. It's what comes out when you're tired, rushed, or challenged. And the only way to control that voice is to train it when the stakes are low. One of the simplest and most effective practices is listening to yourself. Most people have never truly heard how they sound to others. They know what they mean, but not how it lands. Recording yourself on a call, during a presentation, or even practicing aloud can be uncomfortable, but it's powerful. You notice habits you were blind to: rushing, trailing off, filling space, softening unnecessarily. A colleague of mine did this for a week. Each evening he recorded a 1-minute summary of his day. When he listened back, he realized he spoke as if he were apologizing for his own presence. Once he heard it, he couldn't ignore it. Within a month, his communication changed noticeably. Awareness precedes improvement. Another daily practice is intentional brevity. Leaders don't train by talking more. They train by saying less, more precisely. Try this. In your next conversation, aim to express your point in 1 or 2 sentences. Then stop. Notice how people respond. Often they lean in. They ask questions. Your words gain space. This doesn't mean withholding information. It means prioritizing clarity over completeness. You can always add more later, but you can't take back confusion once it spreads. There's also power in practicing transitions. Many people lose authority when moving between topics or responding to questions. The leaders practice phrases that buy time and maintain composure. Let me think about that for a moment. Here's how I see it. What matters most right now is this. These phrases become anchors. When pressure rises, you don't scramble. You step onto familiar ground. Training your voice also means training your body. Communication doesn't live only in words. It lives in posture, breathing, and presence. A slouched body produces a weaker voice. Shallow breathing produces tension. Small adjustments, standing taller, breathing deeper, slowing your movements, change how you sound without changing a word. I once watched a quiet shift in a friend who started paying attention to posture alone. He didn't try to sound more confident. He simply stood more deliberately. His voice followed. Another daily habit is choosing one behavior to refine at a time. Maybe it's removing filler words. Maybe it's slowing your pace. Maybe it's ending statements without turning them into questions. Focus on one change for a week. Mastery comes from focus, not overwhelm. Consistency matters more than intensity. Leadership voice is also shaped by how you speak when no one is watching. How do you talk to yourself? Internal dialogue leaks into external communication. If your inner voice is harsh, rushed, or doubtful, it will eventually show up. Leaders cultivate calm internally so it appears externally. This doesn't mean forcing positivity. It means practicing clarity even in thought, naming things accurately, avoiding exaggeration, staying grounded. There's a small ritual I've seen effective leaders use. At the end of each day, they ask themselves 3 questions. What did I say well today? Where did I lose clarity? What will I do differently tomorrow? This reflection turns experience into training. Leadership voice also grows through feedback. Not constant feedback from everyone, but selective feedback from people you trust. Ask specific questions. Did that sound clear? Did my message land? This shows maturity, not weakness. One leader I admired did this regularly. Over time, his communication sharpened, not because he chased approval, but because he cared about effectiveness. It's also important to remember that leadership voice evolves. What works in one season may need adjustment in another. As responsibilities change, so does communication. Leaders stay curious. They adapt without losing their core. Perhaps the most important daily practice is alignment. Speak in ways that reflect your values. When your words align with what you believe, confidence becomes natural. You don't need to perform, you simply express. People sense this immediately. Authentic authority doesn't shout, it resonates. Training your leadership voice is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more precise, more grounded, and more intentional in how you show up. Over time, this precision builds trust. This grounding builds respect, and this intention builds influence. You don't need to wait for a big moment to start. Start with the next conversation, the next email, the next meeting. Choose one small adjustment and repeat it until it becomes habit. Leadership is not a switch you flip. It's a rhythm you practice. And your voice, steady, clear, and composed, is one of the strongest signals you send to the world that you are ready to lead. Over the past hour, we've explored something many people spend their entire lives overlooking: the power of how you speak. Not the words alone, but the intention, clarity, and presence behind them. Leadership, as you've seen, is not reserved for the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the person whose words carry weight. We began by uncovering why so many capable people are not taken seriously when they speak. Not because they lack intelligence or preparation, but because their communication sends mixed signals. We learned that leadership starts when your voice feels solid, not rushed or uncertain. When your words don't sound optional. We then moved into owning every word you say, standing behind your thoughts without apology, removing the habit of distancing yourself from your own ideas. Leadership grows the moment you stop hiding behind softness and start speaking with intention. From there, we focused on clarity. Because no matter how smart you are, confusion cancels influence. Clear thinkers don't overwhelm others with everything they know. They guide people toward what matters most right now. Clarity reduces friction. It creates movement. We learned how controlling your voice is essential before you can lead others, how breathing, pace, tone, and silence shape how your message is received, how calm authority settles a room long before logic ever does. We talked about speaking to move people to action, not just inspiring, not just explaining, but giving direction, turning ideas into steps, removing ambiguity so people know exactly what to do next. We addressed the fear of sounding aggressive, even how to drop weak language without losing respect or humanity. You learned that firmness and calm can exist together, and that clarity is often the kindest thing you can offer. We explored how to stay grounded when you're challenged, how the pause, the breath, and emotional control preserve your authority when pressure rises, how leaders respond instead of react. And finally, we brought it all together by focusing on daily practice. Because leadership voice is not built in big moments. It's built in small ones, repeated consistently, in how you speak when it doesn't matter, so that when it does, you're ready. None of this requires you to change who you are. You don't need a different personality. You don't need to become louder, harsher, or more dominant. You need alignment between what you think, what you feel, and what you say. And now comes the most important part. Practice. Choose one principle from this audiobook and apply it today. Maybe it's removing one weak word from your speech. Maybe it's slowing down before you respond. Maybe it's ending a conversation with clear direction. Small changes, practiced daily, reshape how people experience you. Leadership doesn't announce itself, it's felt, and every conversation is a chance to train it. If this audiobook helped you see communication differently, don't let it stop here. Share this video with a friend you know who needs it right now, someone who's capable, thoughtful, and ready to improve their life but hasn't yet found their voice. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for choosing growth, clarity, and self-mastery. I appreciate you more than you know. Until the next video, speak less, speak clearly, and let your words carry weight.